Once you start talking too, I'll admit people from the waiting room so you don't have to worry about it.
Excellent.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. I ask you all to mute yourself while I do our brief introduction. So great to see everyone here this evening. Welcome to Sinister Wisdom's event, Hot Talks, Lesbian and/or Queer in Blackness. My name is Julie Enzer, and I am the host for this evening. We have a great hour planned with plans to wrap up as usual no later than 8:05 p.m. I haven't seen anyone on the call who's not familiar with Sinister Wisdom, but I will remind you that Sinister Wisdom is a quarterly journal of lesbian literature and art. If you're not currently a subscriber, I encourage you to sign up today for a subscription by going to sinisterwisdom.org/subscribe. I'll put these URLs in the chat when we're done. And I remind you that a group of monthly sustainers is vital to Sinister Wisdom. If you want to give $3, $5, $10, or maybe $100 a month to Sinister Wisdom, you can sign up as a sustainer at sinisterwisdom.org/sustainers. I send out emails every month when your gift comes in with behind the scene details and new information about what we have coming for the journal. This evening, we're very excited to present our second intergenerational dialogue of this series of Hot Talks, this one between Cheryl Clarke and Shakira Rifos. I will introduce both of them more fully in a few minutes. Our agenda for this evening is that Cheryl and Shakira will talk about the topic, lesbian and/or queer in Blackness, for between 20 and 30 minutes. Then we will go into breakout rooms for about 13 to 15 minutes with likely 3 to 5 people in each breakout room. I'll give you some more instructions about breakout rooms when we get to that juncture of our program. In the breakout rooms, though, people will have an opportunity to talk about what hearing Cheryl and Shakira discuss inspires for them. Then we'll gather back together and report back from those small group discussions, engage more questions and comments. We then end with our usual dance number. A few notes: keep your microphone muted throughout the conversation between Cheryl and Shakira. Unmute when you go into the breakout rooms, and please show your face in the breakout rooms if you can. If you want to show appreciation, you can wave your hands, use the reactions emoji on Zoom, and put things in the chat. I'll pull things out of the chat when we all come back together. If you need technical assistance this evening, please feel free to chat with me. And that's it for our announcements. Other than, I will say, this is off my script, that I've been getting so many good news emails that Sinister Wisdom 119 is indeed arriving to people. Also, Sinister Wisdom 120 is arriving to people. So I am relieved that for our purposes, the mail system is working better, and that is thrilling. And I thank everyone for their patience. If you've not gotten 119, there are instructions in 120 when that arrives for you of what to do. And everyone will get a copy before the year is out, and even sooner than that. Now, on to our program. We begin with this wonderful dialogue between Cheryl Clarke and Shakira Rifos. Cheryl Clarke, many of you know, is a Black lesbian feminist poet and the author of 5 books of poetry: Narratives, Poems in the Traditions of Black Women from 1982, Living as a Lesbian from 1986, Humid Pitch from 1989, Experimental Love in 1993, and By My Precise Haircut, winner of the 2016 Hilary Tam Award from Wordwork Books. She also has 2 wonderful chapbooks, Your Own Lovely Bosom and Targets. Her writing has appeared in numerous publications, including the journal Conditions, Sinister Wisdom, Callaloo, Black World, African American Literary Review, and the iconic anthologies This Bridge Called My Back and Homegirls. For the midterm election of 2018, she co-edited Dump Trump, a Sinister Wisdom special issue, and is now working on a Sinister Wisdom issue that's a tribute to Conditions. Sheryl, with her sister, is co-organizer of the annual Hobart Festival of Women Writers. And just this week, we learned that Sheryl is the recipient of the Bill Whitehead Lifetime Achievement Award from the Publishing Triangle. We were thrilled to see that wonderful recognition for her work. Shakira Rifos is an educator from the Netherlands who joined the California Films Institute's Education Department by way of the Sarasota Film Festival and the Sundance Institute. With a deep passion for storytelling, Shakira attributes her drive for community, justice, and common sense from the cultures of her mother and father, hailing from Suriname and Trinidad, respectively. Her career has been dedicated to empowering young independent thinkers through the exploration of art history and creative expression, prioritizing equitable praxis through engagement with film, as well as demystifying the path for BIPOC students to become Film Fest administrators and curators. You will often hear her shouting, "We need more Black programmers," from the rooftops of her current home and office in the Bay Area of California, to anyone who will listen. We had a great preview of this conversation a couple weeks in advance of this, so I'm very excited to present to you all Cheryl Clarke and Shakira Rifos.
Oh, do we start to talk now?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Julie. Hello, Shakira. Unmute yourself.
Sorry, okay. I was asking how you are doing today.
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm happy to be in conversation with you. How do you want to start this?
You started.
Okay. I would like to ask you, I think today we're going to talk a little bit about when we've lived our best life being fully queer and fully Black, both of those things. When the best time for us was in life or is, and then also when those two things intersected equally, but maybe weren't so good. But before we do that, I wanted to ask you about this poem called Marimba in your book, Living as a Lesbian. Can you tell me a little bit about Marimba before I read it?
It was based on a marimba player I knew and had invited to perform at Rutgers, where I worked for many years in New Jersey, and who also performed at a restaurant on, oh God, I think 6th Avenue and 13th Street in the city. I can't remember her name, but she was beautiful. She was beautiful, and she played a marimba, and she had a really good band, and so it's sort of dedicated to her. That's
Were you friends?
No, not really. We knew each other. I mean,
Right.
no. If you mean, was she a lesbian? I don't know.
Of course she was. If you
I don't know that she was a lesbian. She might have been. She lived in New York. You know, every woman in New York is a lesbian.
I think everyone's
Isn't
gay.
that right, Claire and Blanche? I saw y'all out there.
It's
Um,
definitely right.
Blanche. Blanche, she'll stand up for the lesbians. Hello there, Claire. You'll stand
there.
up for them too. Anyway,
You will.
no, we weren't friends like that. We just knew each other because I invited her to perform at my school when I was doing music programming there.
Did you show her this?
No, we weren't even.
Not like that at all.
Not even, no.
So there's just someone out there that has this piece of art written in dedication to them and just doesn't know it.
She probably doesn't. No, I'm sure she doesn't. You know how long ago this was?
How long ago?
1986. That was a long time ago, probably before you were born.
It was a little bit after I was born. I was still
just a little bit. No, okay. That's the genesis of that poem.
Okay, well, it's hot. I'm gonna read it. Okay. And then when I'm finished, will you tell me if I did a good job or not?
Okay.
Okay. All right. Awake on the edge of sleep after brief absence, you next to me, inking my dreams, asleep on the edge of waking, I stumble among blind hunters left to feel for their prey, pressed, strength fading. I plunge past their groping blows to yours and drowsily refuse to lift my legs open over the edge of the bed until I am told of the darkness of her stairwell, of how she smelled you and came for you there. Black camisole, fingers flexed, how you opened your skirt, pushed her on her back, stooped, and spread your legs for her mouth, lips dripping for it. I hear a marimba player chanting her slave song in Portuguese. Lick me and cover me. I am in love with you.
You did. You read it very well.
Hot.
It's a good poem. I had forgotten it.
There's also, so there's this image here. Oh, wait. Oh, I'm mirrored.
Yes, we see it.
What were you, was this like, I think you were telling me that the 80s, this was the time where you were like feeling most Black and queer and like your best in that intersection?
Yes, but let me just say this.
Okay.
Black and lesbian.
Black and lesbian.
Right.
Of course.
I don't mind queer, but let's not forget lesbian, because let me tell you why. Because many of us call ourselves queer, so we don't have to say lesbian. So many of us who call ourselves, oh, stop preaching, Cheryl. Because I don't have to preach to Shakira. I forgot what I was saying. So anyway. Okay, I've talked enough now.
Shakira. No, I asked you a question.
Didn't I answer it?
No.
Okay. What was the question though?
The question was about, wait, I'll bring back the.
Oh, what was I thinking about when that picture was taken?
No, not at all. What remember we talked about when we felt our best in both the intersection of lesbian and Black. And I'm going to talk about what came up for me in that conversation as well. But I think you told me that it was like around the time when this picture was taken.
Yes, it was during the 80s when I felt really connected to the lesbian community nationally and was doing a lot of work in lesbian community, specifically on Conditions magazine. So
Mhm.
yeah, that was a really good time for me.
And did you have like a Black and lesbian community around you in the city at that time or in New Jersey? We talked about Whitney Houston a little bit, which I think was really cool, but we're not going to
He
digress.
wasn't in my community
We're not
though.
going to digress to that, but
Uh,
um, yeah, did you have like the support of the Black lesbian community at that time? Did you find that there?
yes, I did, both in New Brunswick, where I lived, and in New York City. Um, yes, I did, as well as white lesbians.
Yeah.
So I have always had a multicultural lesbian community.
I think like we talked a little bit about, you know, what the difference between lesbian and queer, what that feels like for me outside of like, you know, who I sleep with or who I'm attracted to. And I don't know if you remember me mentioning that being a part of when I lived in Florida, like being a part of the LGBTQ community or the LGBT community there was very isolating for me as like a Black person, because I felt like the LGBT community was very focused on like whiteness. And I remember really clearly that there was, so in Philadelphia, there was this project that this LGBTQ center had started where they added the brown and Black stripe to the rainbow flag as a means of like, you know, LGBT folks finding solidarity with the struggle that, you know, Black and brown folks are still facing. And I felt like in that time, there was so much backlash in the gay community about those two stripes in Florida. Like I, at a certain point, just kind of stopped like going to Pride. I stopped finding like a reflection of myself in the LGBT community. And I feel like in queerness, there's like so much more solidarity with like Black movements and kind of divesting from, you know, whiteness and interrogating power. I never found interrogating power with lesbians, where I have found that with white lesbians specifically, where I have found that with people who, you know, consider themselves to be queer. Does that make sense?
Um, yes, and it does make sense. Although I must say that the lesbians I have organized with are more radical than the LGBT community that you may be referring to. Because I think I've always been involved, well, I know I've always been involved with radical lesbians. So, and I have to say this, and I don't want to sound too pompous, but I
Please
have
do.
to say that lesbian feminists are the first people I knew who talked about issues of diversity, who talked about um, yes, incorporating issues of Blackness, issues of people of color into our movements. Because I can remember when I was recruited for the Conditions Collective, the reason was because the all-white, it was just 4 white women, the all-white Conditions Collective in Brooklyn wanted to diversify their editorial board and invited women of lesbians of color to join the board. And from that point on, you know, we proceeded as a multicultural collective, editorial collective. When I worked for, when I was on the board of New York Women Against Rape, and not all of the leaders in that group were lesbians, many of them were lesbians. That organization also insisted upon a multicultural kind of thrust. Oh, I shouldn't use thrust, I should say impact. So that's just 2 examples. I mean, I could go on.
Well, you know, I think that like even that language, like when I think about lesbians and my experience in the communities who call themselves lesbians and communities who call themselves queer, I feel like with lesbians, I feel like diversity is kind of like diversity and multiculturalism, you know, makes a lot of sense or made a lot of sense. And I think that's kind of like where everybody stopped in that community. I feel like once we got gay marriage, I feel like everybody left. All the gay men that you know I would walk in the pride parade with, like all the lesbians, like we're not willing to like look further about the people that are still like left behind, like, you know, Black trans kids, Black queer kids. I don't see the same kind of like energy for that liberation in the LGBT community as I do in the Q community. And just having moved to California and like the wild difference between how people talk about these issues, where queerness is more kind of like an umbrella term here as opposed to back in Florida. I just see such a difference in how also in the education system, they're allowed to talk about these identities and how they're celebrated. And, you know, all I really want to do is like see young Black trans kids and young trans white kids or every race, and like gay kids and queer kids, lesbian kids and gay kids. I just want them to be like free, but we can't be free. We can't all be free unless like folks are still willing to fight for those who are left behind. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I do. I don't think that, what was I going to say now? I think that's the difference between a radical lesbian presentation and a reformist LGBT presentation of issues. You see what I mean? That, yes, many LGBT, I don't even know if the reformist lesbian and gay community even sees themselves as part of an LGBTQ community, because that terminology is so recent compared to the LGBT movement in this country. I mean, the queer movement in the, I don't want to say queer, I'll say lesbian, gay, LGBT. See, it's so hard, all these,
All the
since
alphabets.
1969. Since 1969.
Do you feel like do you have a lot of conversations with like white lesbians about their role in like anti-Blackness?
Well, white lesbians, some of them are my best friends. Some of them are my best friends. Yes, we have these conversations. We've always had these conversations.
I feel like whenever I have a conversation with, you know, folks of a certain generation and of a certain leaning, it comes across as like very accusatory, as opposed like I'm accusing them of something as opposed to asking them to see something. And I've just never, you know, felt really like there was that interrogation of their own power. I just did a panel for Bernard College for the Athena Film Festival called Deconstructing Whiteness. And they almost had to cut part of it out. Like they had to like have a text on the bottom because I said something about Frederick Bernard, who was a slave owner, and the college is still named after them. So they asked me to do a panel on deconstructing whiteness, and then I started talking about white feminism, and that was like way too much for them. Like they almost like could not handle it because like I'm asking people to like look within, as opposed to like look at that racism over there, and how that like keeps young Black lesbians from probably feeling connected to the LGBT community, and instead moving more towards like a more ambiguous queer identity. But do you think it's like generational also?
Well, some of it's
Lesbian,
generational.
queer?
Everything's generational. Some of it's generational. I don't know if I'm quite sure of what you mean, but I'm sure whatever you mean is brilliant. And maybe that'll come up in the discussion.
Do you feel, I just saw a comment that said, who will fight for lesbians? And I'm kind of wondering, like, is that like a general thought in the community that like there's nobody that's really willing to go?
Sometimes I feel that way because, as I said, when we started, that oftentimes I feel that people would rather identify as queer so they don't have to identify as lesbian. Or gay, but especially lesbian. So why can't we have an umbrella term, which queer is? Because queer is not just lesbian, gay, bi, trans. It's, as you said when we talked before, people who are anti-heterosexist, anti-heteronormative, anti-gender binary, politics, but still the lesbian, gets lost in a lot of the conversation, while lesbians have done so much for LGBTQ people in terms of organizing, in terms of our institutions.
Absolutely.
I don't know what, that's all I want to say. No, that's not all I want to say. So that's how I feel about, that's why I always call myself a lesbian, because of what lesbians have done and still are doing for our communities. Now, who will speak for lesbians? Well, maybe lesbians have to still speak for lesbians, because, like all women, lesbians have to do.
Right, but that's
A
what I'm
lot
saying.
of,
Though I feel like I was so happy to be a Black lesbian woman until I felt like really like my Blackness was not seen in that
Mhm.
space. So
And that's based in Florida.
well, specifically in Florida, but I mean that's where I lived,
Yeah,
and
okay. But you
and
don't live there now. You live in California, which is different.
well, yeah, California
More
is different,
liberal.
but well, that's the thing. I don't think it's really about like. I wish that I could say it's conservatives who deny my Blackness, who don't include me, who don't think that should be a priority in conversations about liberty. I wish that I could say that was conservatives, and I just feel super comfortable with liberals. But it's often, I think that's kind of like also what where my pain and frustration comes from in LGBT circles, where that Blackness is just not prioritized. And this is not just something that I see. I think it's a pretty like it's a conversation that I have with people all the time. I feel like lesbians stopped fighting for me when gay marriage became an institution, and that's like kind of the easiest way to draw more of like a historical and like
And I say,
when I started to like really feel like an outsider in that group, in a group that should be part of how I move.
and I say that the lesbians you're talking about are reformist lesbians, or liberal lesbians, maybe even neoliberal lesbians, not necessarily radical lesbians or lesbians with a more radical politics. Yeah, a lot of us settled for gay marriage. I'm even married now. I said I'd never be married. But, you want the inheritance. You want the inheritance benefits. If you die before your partner or your partner dies. See, you laughing because you're young. But, I'm old. So, I'm concerned about that shit. But, so someone has here, what happens if you are a Black lesbian? I can't finish it. What does it say?
Black lesbians who feel like outsiders Okay. What happens if you are a Black lesbian who feel like outsiders among Black lesbians in their own communities? I mean, I'm definitely not here to talk about what Black people are not doing, if that's okay.
Uh, what if you what if you feel like an outsider among Black lesbians? That's the
Right.
question.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you have? Do you have a feeling about that? I mean, I could say something to that if you.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
I feel like that type of like exclusion is just all rooted in like white supremacy.
All due to what?
White supremacy. Like who is good enough and who isn't. Like just because, just because I'm Black doesn't mean that I don't subscribe to doing things that are like ingrained in me because I live in, a white society. So I think that's where this conversation is kind of like gets complicated, because in a lot of ways, you know, it's either lesbian forward or Black forward. It's never really it's not really it's not really both in community.
Cheryl, do you want to respond to that? And then I wonder if this is really a good moment for us to think about breakout rooms. But I want to give you each a chance to say one more thing if you'd like.
Sorry, Julie, did you just call on me?
No, I wanted Cheryl and Shakira to
Okay, I thought you said my name. Sorry. I'm sorry.
Well, I think if you're feeling like an outsider in or feeling rejected, if you're a Black lesbian feeling rejected by other Black lesbians, I think if you care about being a part of the Black lesbian community where you are, you have to challenge that. I know it takes a lot of, courage, but if you care about being part of your Black lesbian community, and I don't necessarily mean solely, that is solely your community of lesbians, but you have to challenge it if you want to be a part of it. That's easier said than done, but that's
I
my advice.
appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think that's really good advice.
Did you ask that question, Shakira? You ain't
No,
asked.
it was someone in the chat.
I know, I'm only kidding you. Oh, God.
anything else. Shakira, do you want to add anything else?
No, I'm just really happy that I was introduced to Sheryl. It's been it's been helpful for me.
Oh,
be warned, meeting Cheryl Clarke changed my life.
Really, Julie? Don't go there. Don't be lying.
Now we're going to move into breakout rooms with small groups of people. In your breakout room, I ask you to do 3 things. First, introduce yourselves to one another. Second, talk about what this discussion prompted for you. And third, think of questions that you might bring back to the large group for us to explore this evening, but also in our work going forward. Now, I'm going to send you into breakout rooms. Zoom is going to prompt you. You have to say, yes, take me into the breakout room. I'm going to give you about 10 minutes and you'll get a 1-minute notice when the time comes for you to leave the breakout rooms. So you'll be automatically assigned to the rooms, and I'm sending you now.
harmony. Yes, peace and harmony. Oh, can you hear? We'll all be singing by song in peace and harmony. Yes, peace and harmony. Peace and harmony.
That was fun.
Shakira.
All right.
That was fun.
Excellent.
Short.
I'm glad that you all
Well
had
done.
fun. Let's put your name in the chat or raise your hand if you would like to share something from your breakout room.
How many breakout rooms were there?
That's such an excellent question. And every time I do breakout rooms, I think to myself, I should write down how many rooms I split people into. And every time I do not.
Okay. Sorry,
So
Judy.
I don't know. There were 7 or 8
Oh,
is,
goodness.
is my note. All right, let's see.
Julie, let me just say, I don't know if you did or didn't try this, but what happened with us is I was hoping that'd be an intergenerational, but there was all older dykes, older lesbians in my group. And so I was disappointed. That because there's too few younger women in this whole, okay. Anyway, that's what happened with us. So it was like talking to ourselves. It was interesting, but.
So,
okay.
so one of the,
That's
I'd like to say that, so, okay, I'm 73 and I've always been hyper conscious of the racism that's out there. And I hear you, Shakira. I totally hear you. And I just don't, you know, I just think that things have gotten really, really bad in terms of hatred because of the racist, because of the rapist who we had as president. And so
Both.
racist rapist.
Racist rapist.
Yeah, and so I just want to say I hear you, and I just want you to know that a lot of us older dykes have been really fighting in terms of anti-racism throughout our lives. I have, so
Right.
count me as an ally.
That's great. Thank you. It's a via, right?
It's a via, yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. I now have
Yeah.
Basha Starr on deck, and then Barbara Esther, and then Blanche Cook. So we'll take folks in that order. Basha, am I saying your name right?
You are saying my name right. I must have accidentally raised my hand. My apologies.
Oh,
I'm like trying to write a whole bunch of notes and like reference like they're like things that people. I'm not ready to speak at this moment. Maybe later. Thank you.
you're not ready. Okay, excellent. Well, nice to see you. Barbara, you're next.
Shakira, I wondered if you were in Miami, and Miami was a very diverse community that I experienced back in the 70s, 80s, and into the 90s, and so on, and into this time of the world, 2021. Lorraine kind of said the other thing that I want to say, because we were all older. And Shakira, I wonder how old you are. If we were trying to guess if you were over 20, we think you are, but the idea that you both were there present and hearing how you were interacting, I thought was just fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you. I know, I think that there is something special to how Black people talk to each other that we don't, like, it's really like cathartic and it's very special. It's not something that we share with white folks all the time. So
Good.
I appreciate that. I'm 37.
Yeah, we didn't think you were 20.
Thank you. Next up, we have Blanche. You can raise your hand or put a note in the comment if you want to be in the queue. Blanche.
I just wanted to say Claire and I, have both been working, against racism all our lives. Life is about the struggle. And I think what we're dealing with now is we're closer to a Civil War reality than we've been since the Civil War. I mean, I think this is one of the most violent and despicable. And what is there? 107. I mean, these creatures that stormed, I mean, we're really looking at a very dangerous moment. And all of us have to, just refortify and continue the struggle. Life is about the struggle. That's it.
Blanche, I want to ask you, Blanche and Claire, what do we do?
I
think we do what you said. We have to challenge constantly because we're permeated in a white supremacist culture and society and institutions. So the struggle is constant every day. And I'm sorry that it was, Shakira, for you, lesbian forward or Black forward. It has to be all of us forward. And that's just constant work, constant. And then we find our allies that we share values and are comfortable with, and we move forward together with a very diverse community within our community.
Right.
Well, do y'all think we can keep the Republicans out? I'm sorry, let me shut up.
No, say your piece, and then
No.
Morgan goes.
That's exactly who we got to keep out.
Hand-to-hand combat with the Republicans here.
Yes, they're
absolutely.
They're disgusting.
Yes.
All
They
right, now
are.
we hear from Morgan Brownlee. Morgan.
Sorry. Go ahead,
All
Morgan.
good.
Morgan.
Thank you. Hi. I just think again, like this is a really interesting conversation because I see a lot of what you were saying, Cheryl, when you were kind of talking about, again, this kind of between the L and the Q and this difficulty in carving out these specific spaces because I'm still very much bouncing back and forth between the two. And
okay.
And then in terms of like my own kind of self-identity, and then I can also see again, like what Shakira is saying, again, of like, at least where I am too in Southern California, of not necessarily finding, this kind of radical element in any of these spaces that I'm looking for. And then it's been so interesting right now, again, watching to all the older lesbians talk and have this discussion where like you guys are very clearly radical, and you're so firm in that. And I don't, and yeah, like maybe it's just, again, like I have a similar experience as Shakira, in which I don't find the younger people around me, and I'm 26, the younger people around me don't tend to be as radical, at least in the lesbian spaces, as much as the queer spaces.
Well, you may have to start your own movement down there and draw people together. Yes, that's often what we have to do. And there are people who share your values and your concepts, whether they are queer or lesbian. I have no problem considering myself queer. And I think queer and lesbian can coexist, though I want to say, notice how no lesbian term could become an umbrella term for what we call queer. Like, we don't have dyke. I mean,
right.
we could say dyke, and that could be,
right.
Dyke people, dykes, whatever, we don't, but it's a sort of neutral term, queer, which, you know, is fine with me because I like the irony. I like the irony of queer. I always have, you know, and the retrogradeness of it. But anyway, that's how I feel. And I think it's fine to go back and, I mean, you know, but they can coexist.
Right.
So we're going to take two final comments. A comment from Lorraine, who has something else to add, and then I'm going to give Shakira the last word.
Yes, please do.
After Lorraine, and then when Shakira is done and gives me the sign of I'm done, I'm going to share my sound. I'm going to play the L word. When the song ends, it ends. But I do have one final announcement that I want to share. Sinister Wisdom 120, Asian Lesbians is in the mail. We're working on a fantastic launch event for it on Tuesday, April 20th at 7 o'clock. If you're on the Sinister Wisdom email list, you'll get the announcement about it, but do mark your calendars now. That's the end of my ad. Lorraine.
I just want to say to Julie, such great work with Sinister Wisdom. Really?
Yes,
Here,
it's
here.
fabulous,
Yes,
Julie.
thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much
Thank you.
Thank
for
you.
coming.
Out.
for this event. Yes, yes.
That's great. Lorraine.
Blanche.
Um,
Blanche and Claire.
I just wanted to say that when people tend to react, when us white women sometimes tend to react, is because we take a phrase and a word and we say, oh, it does not me, you know, that reaction, oh, white feminism. And I know when people talk about white feminism, what they're talking about. And it's not a feminism that is my feminism, even though I'm white. So I think we need to remember the use of words, and also that those old white lesbian feminists like myself, we are all different colors and shapes and opinions. There really is a variety, just like the current young white lesbians, the current Black young lesbians, the current older Black, there's all kinds of different kinds of people in those organizations, in those categories. And when people tend to lump us all together, like we're anti-queer or we're anti-trans because we're older white lesbian feminists, that's not a good thing to do, because it's
We're
not
not.
true. It's not true.
not
That's
true.
all.
Great. The last word to Shakira. Shakira, you're muted, so be sure to unmute.
Yes.
Here.
You know, I just want to say that, you know, without like the work that your generation has done, I wouldn't be having the conversations I am without the work that you all have done and the institutions that you have built. And that has contributed to like my safety, that has contributed to like me being able to use my voice. It's contributed to like being, you know, feeling like I have a home with my girlfriend. So these intergenerational conversations, I think, are really deeply important. And I just want to thank you for kind of like thinking about that, because once we are like kind of disconnected from each other, you know, we're not going to be able to advance. So we do have to keep talking, and like Cheryl said, we have to like keep pushing. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the space.
Brava!
Thank you all. Here comes your song.
Come on and say the L word. It's the only chance you got to reclaim our name and not live in shame to try to improve our lot. Come on and say the L word. It's the only chance you got to stop the lying and denying. And come on and give it a shot. And everybody say lesbian. Everybody say lesbian. Who's there? Silent seekers can't call.
Cheryl, you're great.
Thank you, Glenn.
Great. Lathir's here. Lathir's here from Belgrado.
You're calling.
You're calling for Sheryl. Come to us.
Refos.
Thank you, Sheryl. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So give me an L. Give me an E. Give me an S. Give me a B. Give me an I. A. N. Everybody say lesbian. Everybody say lesbian. Everybody say lesbian.
Hey, Cheryl. Love you, darling.
She is Cheryl.
Open your
Tried to
microphones.
be
Open the microphones and scream lesbian.
Lesbian.
Lesbians.
Lesbian.
Lesbian.
This is a significant time in our community